The Retirement Cafe Podcast, episode 23, Exiting Your Business and Finding New Purpose with an Employee Ownership Trust with Chris Budd.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe Podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and Accredited Later Life Advisor, Justin King.
Hello and welcome to the Retirement Cafe Podcast. This week I'd like to share with you a conversation I had with a friend and fellow financial planner, Chris Budd. Chris shares his story of how he founded and built a successful financial planning business. In his mid-40s, Chris was ready for a new challenge, but was unsure of how to sell his business in a way that would allow him to take the value he's built up, whilst preserving the great business that he created and looking after his employees. He stumbled across an organisation called the Employee Ownership Association and found a solution. Eventually, Chris sold his business to his employees via something called an Employee Ownership Trust. If you're a business owner, this may be something you will be interested in. An Employee Ownership Trust allows you to pass control to your employees without them having to raise capital. Ultimately, your employees indirectly own your business, but all shares remain within the trust. As the owner, you receive a fair market value for your business, which is normally paid to you over an agreed period of time. It takes time to implement a program that results in the transfer of ownership to an Employee Ownership Trust, because ultimately it's about building a company that will make the profits needed to buy out the owner. So here's my interview with Chris explaining how this route worked for him and why it ultimately enabled him to find new purpose. So I'm really pleased to be joined by my friend Chris Budd, who is, well, I suppose he's recently retired. Hi Chris, how you doing?
Rumours of my retirement are greatly exaggerated. Hey, I love this cafe, mate. What a lovely spot.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, I can seriously recommend the lemon drizzle cake.
Fantastic. So Chris, tell me where you're at, where you've come from, a bit of your backstory.
I'm
really.
from Bristol, so it's where are you to? Tell me, where are you to? So I, for many years, ran a financial planning company called Ovation Finance down in Bristol. And I sold it in March to the employees via something called an Employee Ownership Trust.
Wow.
Which is a big topic in itself, but perhaps not for today. And I now have written a book about it called The Eternal Business, which is my fourth book. And I am promoting the idea of employee ownership trust because I think it's a massive and society-changing thing. Really.
Yeah. So tell me about this idea you wanted to leave this business. You've been in this business a long time, haven't you?
1998.
Wow. Okay. So it's a significant part of your career, and then you suddenly went. Well, you wake up one day and go, I don't want to do this any longer.
It's a significant part of everything. It's not just career. Owning your own business, especially when you're founded, it defines me. You know, it is who I am. When you meet people at parties, what do you say? You know, when somebody says to you, what do you do? How do you answer that? That's one of my tips I always used to give for people who are retiring is when you're retired, you want to be able to answer that question with something.
Yeah.
So for me, the decision to start moving away from the business, I took about 7 years ago.
Wow.
The story is, to try and keep it short, is that I had what the doctor called a muzzy head, mild depression. I was unhappy. I took some business coaching, and that business coaching revealed that what I wasn't doing was writing novels, and that was a thing in life that actually really was passionate to me. So I did that. I published 2 novels, stopped working on Wednesdays, and started the process slowly of moving myself out of the business, of making myself the least important person in my business.
Sure. And did you have a kind of, an idea of what the future? How old were you when you made this decision, by the way? Because I think, for my retired audience, they're going to, retirement is, for most people, is kind of 60, 65, that type of thing.
Yeah, well, I defy the word retirement. We'll come on to that maybe.
Sure.
So I'm now 51.
Yeah.
So I started this process at 45, deciding I wanted to do something else, because that's what retirement is, deciding you want to do something else, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I decided that I've been in financial planning for a long, long time. I love it. I'm very passionate about it still, and still involved with the financial wellbeing podcast, all that stuff. But actually, I just decided there were new things in life to try out. about 7 years ago. So when I was 44, something like that. But that was as a response to my body telling me I wasn't happy.
Right.
You know, this depression, this muzzy head. My body was saying, you got to do something different. You got to make changes.
Sure. And so, what helped you kind of get to that point of, right? Okay, I know I need to do something else, but what is that going to be?
I think I could put it down to a day that I went to the Employee Ownership Association regional meeting held at the offices of Arup, because I had made loads of changes to the business that meant I wasn't needed anymore.
Right.
Which is weird, by the way. Okay. Careful what you wish for, you know.
Yeah.
But I didn't have an ownership model. I didn't know how to sell it. And I went to an EOA regional meeting, and suddenly I found this new way of doing
EOA
things.
being Employee Ownership Association,
Sorry.
right? Okay.
We all love a good TLA, don't we?
Yeah.
Three-letter acronym. So I decided that this is for me, this is my way out. And not only that, once I started really thinking about it, really researching, I realised that it could be society changing in a very, very positive way. So I wrote a book about it, The Eternal Business, and I now talk and help companies to do it. It's a wonderful, wonderful project. So it's a new project for me, and I'm really passionate about it.
Great.
I'm working harder now than I was 2 years ago, much harder.
But you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
So, I can imagine lots of people running their own businesses, or maybe significant shareholding in their own businesses or another business, could feel a bit strangled by that. It could go and go, how on earth do I exit from this? How do I do something else? I mean, this for you was the route out.
It was, yeah. I mean, there's a whole load of things in what you've just said there, Justin, because owners who can't let go.
Yeah.
You say, how do I get out? Well, actually, you can get out. You can just lock the door and leave.
Sure.
There's always a way to get out. So what's stopping you? Well, generally speaking, it's you. It might be the finances, to be fair, but you can always go get another job.
Right.
So, but I've met so many owners who are the worst thing in their own business. Sadly, and I'm not saying I was the worst thing, but I definitely was holding the business back by the time I was, if I hadn't been doing what I was doing to exit myself. So how does an owner move into that position? Well, there's a couple of different ways. Firstly, it's really important that owners have something else to go to. So the phrase I use for this is you need to be pulled, not pushed. You need a new sense of purpose. It's an awful lot easier to go to something else when it's pulling you than it is when somebody's trying to push you out the door.
Right.
So being pulled, not pushed is one part of it. Finding the model, the employee ownership trust model, that's, understanding that. That's one of the things that I help companies to do, owners to do. But a new sense of purpose, good old financial planning. How much do you need to sell your business for? So I often ask this question of owners, how much do you need to sell your business for? And they say, I don't know, it's worth 500,000. And forgive me, but that wasn't the question. The question is, how much do you need to sell your business for? Good old financial planning is at the heart of all of this. Work out what you want to do with your life, and then spend your money on that. All that kind of stuff. So there's loads of things that owners can do to actually help themselves out.
And other people get to that event when they're exiting, and they are saying, right, okay, now I'm going to retire. I'm just going to go on permanent holiday. Because they've enjoyed their holidays over their lifetime, and they think, right, this is the time for playing golf, for going on cruises, etc., etc. What's your view of retirement?
I think you need purpose in life.
Right.
The financial well-being book and podcast and research that I do on that shows that people need social interaction. That's the number one contributor towards happiness. I think number two is purpose, is having a meaning. Now, purpose could be travel. Well, at least people might think that that's purpose, but I would argue that's not purpose. The way I would put it is that purpose, having a goal is what you do during the day. Having a purpose is what gets you out to do that thing. That's the difference. So find a new purpose, something that you can get passionate about. To answer that question at a party, what do? You can answer it with something that you can be proud of.
Yeah.
That could be getting involved as a trustee of a charity, working in a local charity shop, volunteering of all sorts. There's so many things to do. But purpose is something higher than that.
Yeah.
Something that you want to, and it almost always. I mean, you've seen this over the years, dealing with people who go into retirement. The number of people when they've made enough money then start to help other people. That is such a common way to spend your time in retirement. Having said that, I came across somebody once who said, answer the question, what will I do in retirement with? I'm going to sit in the garden and read a book. And I said, okay, but I'm looking kind of for purpose. What will you do when you finish that book? I'll read another book. And that was absolutely all she wanted to do. And I'm not saying that that can't be done, maybe that is right. But personally, I think having something that pulls you, having a purpose, having something new to get you energized and out of bed in the morning is important.
Yeah. I often reflect with clients as they're going into this transition to find out, saying, let's say that you live to 100 and you knew it was that last day and you could reflect back on that little chunk of your life. Because you can't do anything about what happened already, but the kind of, let's say you're 60 and you said, right, okay, the decisions I made at 60 to this day of 100 when I'm turning out the light tonight and not waking up in the morning was amazing, was fulfilling, was just, that was an amazing part of my life and was, I don't feel really energized by what I achieved. And then if you can have that reaction at that point of turning out the light, which would be pretty amazing, knowing that you were dying that night, but how do you then back plan that in essence?
Yeah.
How do you turn around at 60 and go, okay, so what's the strategy that I now make sure that 30, 40 years is just going to be meaningful?
So I don't know about that, because I don't want to put too much pressure on people. That lady who wanted to sit in the garden and read a book, if that's what makes her happy, that's cool.
Well, of course.
You and I are people, I think, who are driven to have meaning and purpose. And I do believe a degree of purpose is important for everybody, but I don't think we need to build it up to be too massive. Let's not put too much pressure on people to find something extraordinary for them to do in life. Just find something to do, So I absolutely agree with you, but I perhaps would just try and get people to just put some thought into it without thinking that they've got to come up with something extraordinary. We can't all change the world.
No.
And those that get to usually are just lucky that they happen to be listened to more than somebody else.
Yeah.
So just find something that gives you fulfillment. I'll give another quick story about one client who retired after 40 years working for the same company. Had nothing set up to go to, hadn't thought about it at all, wasn't really looking forward to it, in fact. But he reached 65, got his pension, and then his kids kind of gave him their kids to look after. We got off to work now, fantastic granny and granddad, you can look after the kids during the day. He wasn't very happy and he died of a heart attack 6 months later. Now, that may or may not be connected. I suspect it might have been,
Yeah. So
he hadn't prepared for it. He hadn't found something new.
And the work he was possibly doing up until that point in time may have provided him with purpose and fulfillment. And suddenly,
his role in the organisation as well, yeah.
And suddenly he's then the ex, whatever that position was, you're the ex-employee or the business owner or the doctor or what have you.
Which is why I say, let's get rid of even possibly the word retirement.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I know we're in the retirement cafe, so
sure.
Apologies. What was the strapline we thought of the other day? The retirement cafe, the place where you're not allowed to mention the word retirement.
Absolutely.
It's just a change of circumstances.
Yeah.
I'm doing this today. Next week I'm going to do that. Yeah. That's all the retirement means.
Yeah. And it needs to be redefined, because the classic marketing blurb that we see of airbrushed elderly couples walking hand in hand down the beach. On sun-kissed beaches, etc. And that's not real life retirement, is
it?
Their
teeth certainly aren't real, are they? Never. No, exactly. And happily throwing kids up in the air and all that kind of stuff. Retirement is about purpose. It's just a change of circumstances. I'm going to do something different.
Yeah.
So people have keep saying to me, I gather you've retired. No, I've just sold Ovation, one business, and I'm now set up another business, and I'm doing something different, and I'm absolutely loving it.
So, what's the next 10 years for you?
Well, Justin, one of the things I'm most proud of in life, and I've done quite a lot of things, if I may be so bold. I've stood on stage playing guitar in a band in front of hundreds of people.
Wow.
I set up a business and exited it, with not many people can say they've done. The thing I'm most proud of is I started the youth section of my local cricket club. And it took 7 years, but from being my kids and a few of their mates, there's now 110 kids playing cricket.
Wow.
And 10 coaches in my little village, and I'm as proud of that as anything I've done. So I set up Ovation and sold it, took 20 years. The cricket, to get not needing me, took 7 years. The Eternal business I reckon I can do that in 3. Then what? I don't know, but I bet something exciting is going to come along. Because you just keep going off and talking to people, looking at things that are interesting. I'm involved with a couple of charities, for example, one called Happy City, which is all about happiness, measuring happiness and not GDP, which is a fascinating subject. There's so much that's interesting out there.
Yeah.
Read a book.
Great.
Read a book and get inspired and go and talk to people about it.
Well, Chris, that's been a really inspiring conversation, and thanks so much for joining me for a cup of coffee.
Thank you. Do you want another cup of tea or a slice of that lovely carrot
I
cake?
think I will, absolutely. Cheers, Chris. Nice to see you. Thanks to Chris Budd for sharing his personal story. You will find links to Chris's book, his consultancy company, and more about employee ownership trusts on the show notes on our website. That's theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you can also subscribe to never miss an episode. If you're a business owner, you may also like to listen to episodes with Barry Van Danzig. That's episodes 16 and 17, which were released on the 26th of Feb and the 5th of March. In those episodes, Barry discusses his story of exiting from his business that he owned and the 3 strategies he considered. Until next time, this is Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Cafe podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.